Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. Attorney Jeremy Hogan believes that if Ripple ends up defeating the SEC in their lawsuit, that the SEC will not end up filing appeal. That will be the end of the lawsuit, and he has articulated the reason why he thinks this is indeed the case. And I'll just tell you here at the outset of the video, I find it pretty damn persuasive, to be honest with you, because I'm like many in the community. I've had this at the back of my mind the last couple of years. We've been going through this case. We talked about it before. We've all been talking about it for literally years at this point. This idea that even if Ripple wins, it may not really be over because the SEC could sue and maybe it ends up going to the Supreme Court, which admittedly technically is possible. No one's ruling this out completely, not even Attorney Jeremy Hogan. But admittedly, that's what I was, I've been fearful about for some time, and I've been thinking, why would the SEC actually drop everything right there if Ripple gets an initial win? Well, it turns out there is a good reason, and I honestly, after hearing what Attorney Hogan had to say about this, I found it highly persuasive, and it's kind of shifted how I've been thinking about this. And not that I'm at a point where I think there's no chance that the SEC would, persist. Maybe they do file an appeal, but even Attorney Hogan, again, even he's not 100% sure, but I do find what he's articulating here to be highly persuasive. And I think it's probably going to make you feel a little bit better because there's a really good chance here that there's going to be some good news for XRP holders here. So there's a chance that Ripple wins, in which case, if Attorney Hogan's right, everything's over right there. But even if Ripple technically loses, if there's still a path forward for the SEC, we may not have this whole drawn-out thing where we have to go up to an appellate level court and then ultimately, to the Supreme Court. Though I will say here at the outset, if that's what it takes, well, I ain't going nowhere. I'm here for it, whatever it takes. I ain't going to be a little baby back biatch and go cry in a corner and sell all my XRP in a panic or anything like that. No. We are pushing back against the SEC. Everybody is, that's got any skin in the game here because they're in the wrong and they're out to harm investors. But if it does actually come to that, I still firmly believe, especially with the makeup of the Supreme Court, and that the degree to which most of them really don't like government overreach, I still think that Ripple would be victorious if it came to that level. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. And so here's a headline from the Crypto Basic titled, "Top Lawyer Says SEC Will Not Appeal If Ripple Wins." And of course, they're talking about, again, none other than Attorney Jeremy Hogan. There's a picture of him right on the screen. And it reads as follows. Attorney Hogan explains why the SEC will not appeal if summary judgment is granted in Ripple's favor. With the Ripple versus SEC summary judgment expected to come anytime soon, many crypto stakeholders are commenting on the possible action the parties may take if the judge doesn't rule in their favor. Notably, Ripple has already disclosed plans to appeal the decision in the Second Circuit if Judge Annalisa Torres rules in favor of the SEC. However, the SEC has yet to reveal its next line of action if Ripple wins. And I'll just pause here to note, because I want to share a quote from Stuart Alderati, who is Ripple's chief legal officer. There's a quote from this article from March 3rd, so just over a month ago, titled "Alderati Outlines Ripple Plans If Court Grants Summary Judgment in SEC Favor." And there's just one quote I wanted to read from here, but I'll tell you this. Ripple's not going to drop this. So here was the quote from Stuart Alderati, Ripple's top in-house lawyer. He said, "I would be supremely confident that this is a winner in the Supreme Court. Not so much because of crypto issues, but because of the guarding against building an administrative state," end quote. And so that's not out of line with what I've been saying and what I'd say, I think even what Attorney John Deaton has been saying in terms of with the makeup of the Supreme Court, the odds of them, tearing the SEC to shreds, it seems like an absolute inevitability, just about right. I feel that confident about it here. Now, not that it's going to get to that point here, but again, Ripple has made it clear that should things not go well for them here at the district court level with Judge Annalisa Torres, this isn't over. They will appeal. The SEC has never said anything of the sort. There have just been assumptions made, including by myself, that perhaps it's probable that they would. Although, again, like I said at the outset of the video, I'm less convinced now, so we're going to get to that. But let me go a little bit further now. This piece reads as follows. Again, jumping back to the one having to do with attorney Jeremy Hogan and his position. The SEC's silence has recently sparked a debate among crypto community members. While some crypto enthusiasts expect the SEC to appeal the decision if it loses, others think the regulator won't appeal. Interestingly, attorney Jeremy Hogan, a partner at Hogan and Hogan law firm, is among those who believe the SEC will not appeal the decision. Attorney Hogan made this known in a recent interview with 3T Warrior Academy. According to Hogan, the SEC will not appeal any unfavorable decision from Judge Torres because the move is of no benefit to the regulator. And he added that the SEC risks setting a binding precedent if the Second Circuit of the Appellate Court still rules against the commission. And this is where we're kind of getting to the meat of it here. So check out this quote from attorney Jeremy Hogan. If the judge rules in Ripple's favor, I do not think the SEC is going to appeal. The reason I say that is because there is no benefit to the SEC to appeal, because if the case goes to the Second Circuit in the appellate court and the Second Circuit rules against the SEC, now that becomes a binding precedent. End quote. So you see what attorney Hogan's getting at here? The SEC, although yes, they could appeal if Ripple wins, and they could risk it, what would they actually get out of it here? So here attorney Hogan said there's no benefit, and I don't know for sure if he literally means that. I mean, because technically, if the SEC were to win, presumably there would be some sort of binding precedent negative for the world of crypto. But even outside of that, even if that ended up not being the case, well, then in theory they would still get some sort of remedy in theory, and you could talk about disgorgement and this and that. So I don't know that attorney Hogan literally meant that, but I get the concept of what he's stating here. But if you're talking about flipping this, if it's Ripple though, if Ripple actually loses, they've got every reason in the world to sue, because look at the SEC, because the idea of being here, the SEC, if they're not going to appeal, if they lose, it's because they're risking too much. That's the primary point here. But if you're Ripple, what are you risking? If you're the SEC, I get it. You're risking something pretty big, because if this doesn't go well for you, now you've got binding precedent, and all your courts all the lawsuits at lower levels of court, all of those are in jeopardy. That would, because then there's this new precedent at a higher level. You're risking a lot. So what the SEC wants to do is not, because it's risky, I get what attorney Hogan's saying, rather than have that binding precedent, which could be negative, get everything you can at a lower court level, just keep attacking the whole system. And what's going to happen? I mean, ultimately, the only way that they're going to go to a higher court is if they're forced into it. I think that's kind of what attorney Hogan's getting at here, at least as it pertains to the SEC v. Ripple case, right? So Peace continues, though. He added that a ruling against the SEC at the Second Circuit would affect the regulator's chances of winning in other cases against crypto companies. And here's another quote from attorney Jeremy Hogan. I'm 90% sure this is what they will do. When they lose, there won't be an appeal because they won't want to mess up their whole agenda here and enforce these regulations against the crypto space, end quote. Yeah, so I sure as hell hope that's correct. And I find that argument to be very compelling, frankly. And I don't know about you guys, but upon hearing that perspective, it actually made me feel a bit better, because that is one of the things, and I've been bringing it up from time to time on the channel fairly recently, just worrying, okay, so even if we get a positive ruling for XRP, well, if the SEC appeals, are exchanges going to relist XRP? Or are they going to be like, well, we got to wait another couple years because, the asshat pricks at the SEC say that the judge got it wrong. Well, maybe we don't have to deal with that. Maybe we don't have to deal with that at all. And I sure as oh my God, I hope that's the case. Because I do really I just want this damn thing to be over. And then you're really, in that scenario, talking about a world where XRP is the only large cap coin on the entire damn planet that has legal clarity. What do you think that might mean in terms of price action? You tell me. I don't know for sure. But I can't imagine it would be bad. So, interesting stuff. Now, there was also this. Somebody asked, somebody just tweeted this out. Why do you consider, I think you're writing this to somebody else, I don't want to pull up the whole thread, but wrote, why do you consider attorney Jeremy Hogan a top lawyer? because he has a YouTube channel. And basically, it was in a thread where somebody was sharing a story where attorney Jeremy Hogan was being described as a top lawyer, as you frequently see. You see attorney Deaton described as that. You see attorney Hogan and some others. And it's included in this article that's on your screen right now. And attorney Hogan actually addressed that. He retweeted that. Again, it's like, what? Fair question. I'm one of a handful of lawyers, other than those litigating the case, of course, who has read every sentence of every pleading, etc. in the SEC v. Ripple case and researched every major issue. I think that makes me a top lawyer for the Ripple case, at least. Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think most of us here would agree, but it was just interesting to see his take on that. But yeah, of course, I completely agree. But there's another interesting point that was brought up as a response to a question. Somebody named Tim wrote to attorney Hogan right there and said, throw some good news out, Jeremy. The community is anxious and depressed. And attorney Hogan wrote, good news is that the longer the decision takes to draft, the better it is for Ripple, generally speaking. And so I don't know for sure what the thought process is behind that, but it is taking longer than some had hoped at this point, so that sounds good. Perhaps it's the case that if this were such a slam dunk for the SEC, then it would have been easier for Judge Torres, to get this whole thing drafted and ultimately completed and get it out into the public much sooner than it's currently taking. Maybe that's the thought process. I don't know for sure since he didn't flesh it out. What else could it be, though? But so the fact that it's taking this much time, like Judge Torres is really making sure that she's got her ducks in a row here. So I don't know about you, but like seriously, you guys tell me what you think. But I found that to be very compelling. I was a bit more worried before I had considered this particular perspective. I think it's interesting, and although I'm not literally 100% certain, well, neither is attorney Hogan, so that's fair. But I find it highly persuasive. So if we get good news for Ripple, even if they technically lose on a few small points, and that's the conclusion, and we can see that Judge Torres has provided clarity for secondary transactions, secondary transactions of XRP on secondary markets. I'm going to feel pretty confident at that particular point in time, more than I otherwise would have, that, yeah, this thing's probably done. This is probably it. Stick a fork in it, man. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.